This new Hearthstone mini set is absolutely cracked, and I believe we're in for an Egg-Cellent mini set. Please don't hold me to my words, I'm just making a pun. We're having eggs in this expansion. The first announcement for the new Hearthstone mini set is officially live, and I just want to give a quick shout out to Blizzard for, first of all, letting me see these new cards, let alone letting me see what is being released before anybody, so that way I can get this content to you guys ASAP, because we don't really have too many cards that are being released in this announcement, but we do have some spice. I will admit, there are some cards I am very much looking forward to. In fact, there is a 2020 Minion that is being released in this game, but unfortunately it is being hidden behind a legendary, so it is not absolutely game breaking the moment that we get our hands on it. So let's go ahead and talk about a Day of Rebirth. That is the name of the mini set, a Day of Rebirth. The colossal egg of Khelos begins to stir. The Ungoro crater erupts in celebration as dinosaur hatching seasons begin. Fireworks, feasts, and ancient stories mark the sacred Tortolan tradition where life begins anew, and the fallen are honored. Prepare yourself. The Day of Rebirth mini set is about to hatch. And that begs the question, what are these new cards that are going to be in the Day of Rebirth mini set? Because we are getting some pretty spicy legendaries. First off, discussing the Beast Speaker Taka, a 7-mana 2/2 battle cry. I'm sorry, Evolve fans, you guys are never going to get a good card. But 7-mana 2/2 battle cry. Discover a legendary beast from any class to gain its stats. Death Rattle, summon it. And now this actually has me thinking about Death Rattle synergies, where if I were to kill this card and then I were to play my Death Speaker Umbra, would Umbra automatically triggers this thing's Death Rattle? I actually don't believe that will be the case, because how is Umbra supposed to know if this thing actually has a Death Rattle in it? But it doesn't mean that you can't potentially use other Death Rattle synergies. I mean, actually, Return Policy doesn't work, but we actually don't even have any cards in Standard that could really use this thing's Death Rattle, except for maybe our Carnivorous Cube. But then again, we have the same issue of the battle cry didn't activate in order to give us the Death Rattle, so I'm already at a loss of words on how exactly to utilize this card outside of maybe like a rogue. A rogue could use this with like Scoundrel, and suddenly they have even more value, even more beasts, and just more pressure all along the board. So that is something that could be utilized with this particular card, but in terms of it synergizing with a lot of Death Rattle cards, it might be a little bit difficult, but I'm kind of hoping that this will be a new way of putting in a 7-drop minion into the deck in case you don't want to use Umbra, so now you have some Elise support. But generally speaking, I think this card is still a little bit underwhelming, because a 7-mana 2/2 with no like taunt, no like rush or anything like that, like, yeah, it'll have a lot of stats, but if it doesn't make an immediate impact, you're essentially passing the turn over to your opponent. But the next card is the card that I am looking forward to the absolute most. In fact, I am probably going to try and make a Demon Hunter deck surrounding this particular card, because we have a new Death Rattle. Crack open Ancient Power. We have the Egg of Khelos. We have a 3-mana 0/3 Death Rattle minion. Summon a slightly cracked egg, where you essentially need to kill the 0/3 minion 5 times in order to finally hatch the Khelos, the 10-mana 2020, essentially the ancient one of this expansion, if you want to explain it that way. However, I would argue that maybe summoning the ancient one might be a little bit easier than this, only because not only do you have to get this card and play it and not die, but you also need to crack it a bunch of times. Now, the very first idea that came into my head was to use like Return Policy with Demon Hunter in order to hit that last piece of the egg in order to summon a bunch of 20 attack minions. But the biggest issue with a deck like this is that you are literally not allowed to run any other Death Rattles in the deck. You're not allowed to run the weapon that draws it. You're not allowed to run Blob in order for it to get defensive tools, because if you want to play Return Policy, you already have 5 minions that you could trigger potentially from these eggs, because one will summon another, will summon another, will summon another, and those are all categorized as different cards within your Death Rattle spawns. So Return Policy is a really funny idea that maybe won't be that good, but Corpse Explosion. You could potentially Corpse Explosion the eggs a whole bunch of times. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, in order to kill this egg with a Corpse Explosion, you are going to need a lot of corpses because, first of all, you need minions to die in order to trigger the egg, but also the egg is going to come back as a 0/3 and you're going to need 3 corpses for each one of those eggs. Technically 2 because the egg is going to add more corpses to it, so maybe, again, Corpse Explosion may not be the best because it requires a lot of setup in order to get to this point. So I really am wondering, how exactly are we going to utilize this card, and is this just going to be another flavor thrown in the expansion that absolutely just doesn't have enough spice to it? Because this card is really cool and really funny, but if we have no way of proccing it, then that just becomes a little bit of an issue. But with cards like Cube, maybe there's like a way to use this in Druid with Cycle of Life, for example, to kill this minion, just keep summoning board, and we also can, you know, proc the quest a little bit easier, maybe. I don't know. It's a lot of setup for not really a lot of payoff, and that is something I am kind of worrying about with this mini set, to where these cards do look fun. Like this 7-mana 2/2 that discovers legendary beasts, and then you have more big stats that are happening when it dies. Absolutely love that. I absolutely love the Khelos card because it's like Ancient One and it has like massive meme potential, but if these cards are completely unplayable, very similar to how the quests are, I am kind of worried about the overall power sentiment that is possible from this mini set, because we just had an expansion that essentially had the least amount of impact that I believe we have ever seen in Hearthstone, and in this mini set does exactly that. Then I really don't believe that this set is going to be remembered fondly, because we really need this mini set in order to bring us from the trenches of despair, and just, we need fun decks, man. We need fun, good decks that are not just StarCraft being completely good and overshadowing everything, you know what I mean? And hopefully, to continue this trend, we do have an actual support card for the egg. We have the Holy Eggbearer, a 2-mana 1/2, draw a 0-attack minion, so you can immediately draw that egg and throw it for turn 3 if you do have that curve. There might be some other 0-attack minions that you feel like throwing into the deck, like, I don't know, the Demon Hunter's Spirit is really the only other card for 0-attack that I can even imagine people playing right now. What, you want to put a Doomsayer in your deck and draw it guaranteed? I guess you could, but I don't really believe it is that powerful, and clearly this card looks like it was printed in order to give the egg decks a little bit of extra consistency. I like this a lot more than like an instrument tech, for example, because at least with this card, the 0-attack minion can be like eggs, that could be minion-based strategies. And something else I just thought about, actually, you can use the Holy Eggbearer in order to draw like a Nerubian egg if you're in a Druid deck, and then you can play the egg, play Life Cycle immediately on turn 3, and that's a decent chunk of stats right there. So there is some potential for this deck in order to fit into like maybe like a Warlock, a Druid, or something that wants to utilize like some Death Rattle minions, like some of the eggs, for example. But generally speaking, I think that this card is just made in order to make the Egg of Khelos a lot more playable and a lot more possible to maybe go into a tier 1 deck. I'm on Copium right now, I'll gladly admit it, but I really want this card to see some level of play. And speaking of cards that I believe will actually see some level of play, we are seeing don ancient masks to wield primordial power. And honestly, I think that these cards are really cool, and you're going to see a lot of new mask cards in this new mini set. And to give you a hint on what exactly is going on with these cards, the masks are like effects that used to be, you know, like for example, this 8-mana Dinosaur Mask. You have Devilsaur Mask available for Hunter, an 8-mana spell that sets a minion's stats to 8/8 and gives it charge. So you're essentially making a build your own King Crush with this spell, and you'll see a lot of other spells in this mini set that are very reminiscent of older cards, filling into the whole nostalgia theme of what this expansion is supposed to offer, right? The only nostalgia is, well, older cards were kind of bad. But regardless, an 8-mana spell to where if you stick a minion on the field and then you immediately give it charge. I don't know if there's any win theory applications that are possible with this card, but if there were, it'd be absolutely busted and worth looking into. But I don't know. Hunter has a lot of just 1/1 minions that stick around. The biggest question is whether or not those kind of decks want to run something like this, or maybe there's like an OTK possible where you can make a minion have charge and then you can summon a bunch of copies of it one way or another. I'm just speculating. I don't have any particular ideas with the spell in mind as of right now, but you know, just to give you guys some ideas on how to cook these eggs that have been given to you. You can scramble them, you can fry them, them. There might be some other ways of trying to poach some of these eggs depending on what cards we are giving in the mini set. But that is really all we have to celebrate today in terms of these new cards. But there's going to be a lot of new content that is going to be revealed over these next couple of weeks, because if I remember correctly, almost all of these cards are going to be released in the next couple of days. So there's a lot of information that might be coming out on this channel talking about the new cards and the new possibilities. I'm still doing my best in order to get through all the other videos that I've been meaning to edit, and we still are doing one video a day. So even though we have this one video right here, as soon as this is posted, I'm currently working on my Rainbow DK video, which will hopefully be posted later today, and then we'll do a stream talking about all this kind of stuff, talking about whether or not we believe this stuff is going to be meta relevant. At first glance, I'm not very hopeful, gotta be honest. I really think that there needs to be a lot. This mini set needs to actually give players, we need actual support for quest decks, we need actual support for these new archetypes that have had absolutely no chance to shine because they're just in the tar pits right now. But the more important question, what do you guys think of these cards? Does this make you want to log into the game? Does this make you want to try out some of the newer archetypes that might be possible? Or are you just going to stay on the StarCraft ship and just be like, we need this set rotated. We need something to happen. I personally don't think StarCraft needs to go, but I am getting very agitated with it. So let me know what you guys think of the new cards. I am very much looking forward to this new egg, trying to make some 20 out of 20 content. We'll talk about the new cards as soon as they're released, and we'll see you guys for the next video.